My guest today is Inna Segal. Inna, you are a pioneer in the field of energy medicine and human consciousness and the best-selling author of The Secret Language of Your Body, which has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. You have over 25 years of experience as a healer, and you are passionate about helping people awaken their body's innate wisdom and heal the deeper causes of their pain. Ina, welcome to the show. Such a delight to have you with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Aggie. So great to be here.
I'm very much excited and looking forward to this conversation. And some things that I would definitely like to explore with you today is how to understand our body's messages and start healing from inside rather than the usual way that people consider healing. What I would like to start with is this. I know that your healing journey began with devastating loss and illness. Tell us about the moment when you realized that you could heal yourself.
I think if we rewind slightly, I was seeing a chiropractor for about a year, 3 times a week, because I had enormous back pain, and the back pain had started much earlier, but I had lost a child, as you were saying. I had a horrible loss, a very painful experience, and that pain of that experience kind of exploded everything else that was going on in my body. I had issues eating, I had issues sleeping, I wanted to die, I was very depressed and anxious, I had psoriasis all over my skin. So there was a lot going on, and very, very bad back pain. And so I was going to this chiropractor but other people with that kind of hopelessness of why me and victimhood, and what have I done to deserve such a fate. And this particular day, where we'll call it the life-changing day, I saw this chiropractor, and he had actually heard about how bad my pain was, where it was difficult to drive and be in the body at the time. I could feel every rock and I just, as the car was driving, and I just kept kind of going out of my own body from the amount of pain that I was in. And he'd come out of his office and he knew the story of what was going on. And I think in his own different ways, he was really trying to help me to move forward, to face things. But I just wasn't fully ready for, for the depth of facing that it needed to happen. And this particular day, I just think he felt that something needed to shift. And he said to me, your body's stuck. And I said, well, yeah, I'm quite aware of this part of the story. And he said, and then, yeah, I said to him, what are you going to do to help me? And he just said, nothing. And I said, what do you mean nothing? And he just said, your body actually wants to be stuck. There's nothing I can do for you at this point. Go home. And I'm not going to say that I was so wise at that moment, because I was pretty enraged that he said those things. And on the way home, I started to really think about the fact that my body wanted to be stuck, and my mind didn't want to be stuck in that sense. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, I want to be stuck. And it was almost like my body had this language that I just did not have access to. And I felt like it was speaking to me in Japanese or Greek, maybe, or another, a language that I just did not understand and didn't know. And so on the way home, I made a decision that I was going to heal myself. I really didn't know what to do or how. And so when I got home after a little while, I just started by placing my hands on my back and really to support my back, because I was just in pain all over and my back was twisted. And I realized in that moment that I wasn't really breathing. I was always breathing very shallowly because I was so afraid of pain. And so I consciously started to breathe deeply and slowly. And then I decided that my mind was coming in and saying all sorts of negative things, that the best thing I could do was to count backwards from 30 just to allow some kind of calmness to occur. And as I was doing it, in that space in between me counting, it occurred to me that maybe I should ask for higher help. And there was pain in that, because when I had the child that died, I really felt like I was trusting in God, so to speak. And I could not comprehend both how my body could betray me as so much, as well as God. So I really felt betrayed by both. And it was very hard to ask for that help, but I did. And I didn't really expect anything to happen, but I felt this warmth kind of just surround me, and it was a softening that I felt internally. And since I had my eyes closed, it was kind of like this golden sunlight pouring into me. And then I thought, okay, something's happening, it's interesting. And within a few moments, for whatever reason, this new thought that I'd never had occurred to me, which was, I wonder what my back actually looks like. Again, without any expectation, I all of a sudden felt like somebody switched something on in my head, and I could literally see my back, like I had, as if I had this x-ray vision. And after my initial fright, I started asking, and I want to say this because it's so important for everybody, because it's not just about asking questions, it's how you ask, from which part of yourself you ask. So in the past, and also see this all the time with people who are suffering, I would always ask from the perspective of, why is this happening to me? Because I felt like I was a victim. But this time I actually asked because I genuinely wanted to know what led me I just turned 21, I think, or was about to, led me to have this experience at this age. And it was, it was really powerful, because I started to receive this consciousness in in terms of visual images. And it wasn't like I was thinking about something in particular, but you might relate to this a little bit. I came from Eastern Europe, and I moved from a culture that was very passionate, very, very warm, into a culture that was a lot more, let's say, cooler than what I was used to.
Smile,
And
because yes.
in Australia. And I had also spent 10 months prior to coming to Australia. I was only 10 years old in Italy. And again, it's a very vibrant, passionate, intense culture. Whereas, in Australia, it's much more kind of spacious and colder, in a sense of, you don't have the same level of connection or passion, or that European energy. And so for me, I was very, very different to the people that I went to school with. And whenever you're different, you get labeled, you get attacked, you get, called all sorts of names. And so I really experienced a lot of bullying. And I went from this incredibly joyful child to crying every single day, to not wanting to go to school, to not knowing how to be in my own skin. And as I was replaying, and all of these images were coming to me, I felt very, very emotional, but I also felt like something in my body, it's like I felt really connected to myself. And like something was unwinding that had become wound up in such a tense, tight way from years and years of feeling like I can't be myself. And as I was acknowledging these images, feelings, memories, understandings, images and things would change. And I became aware of my relationship with my parents. And again, it was very interesting because they came here from Eastern Europe and they could not, they really felt like they couldn't communicate and be themselves. And when they first arrived to Australia, even though they didn't know the language, they felt free to be themselves. Whereas I felt the complete opposite. And, you know, they were dealing with their own challenges and many financial stresses that I absorbed as well. But it was like we were experiencing the complete opposite. I guess life where they felt, wow, we got here, and yes, it's challenging, but we can say whatever we want to say and we're free. And I didn't, and I felt I can't say anything, I can't be myself, I don't know how to be, you know, with these people. And so there was a lot that was going on. And as I kept acknowledging what my body was showing me, I also realized that there was an ancestral element to it of loss. My grandmother went through the war and she lost, she was one of 8 children and she lost 7 of her brothers and sisters during the war. And she just
So,
absorbed.
Ina, sorry, I will interject for a moment. So, you experienced all this that you're saying during that day that you were describing. I want to, because there was something that you said that I really going to go back with, because I think it is very important to understand. You said something about how you asked for help, or from which place you asked for help, not from the victim mentality or why me. Can you share with us what is the other place that you asked from? What was the different place? And so I can understand that.
I always felt like when I would ask previously, it would be from this place of, like I said, the victim and falling apart and why me. Whereas this time, it was one from curiosity and really wanting to understand. And I was also coming from a place of great concentration and being teachable. Like I wanted to learn about all the things that my body was now willing to share with me, you know? And so that was really powerful.
Thank you. Let's the. I want to ask you about specifically. You mentioned something about your body was communicating with you. You said about Japanese or
Yeah.
Greek, and you know that is the topic or the title of your book. Tell me, in this language that our body speaks to us, with your experience over all these years working with people, what are some of the most common messages that people's bodies are speaking, but because we lack the understanding, we ignore them? Are there some really frequent ones?
The messages are, I guess, you know, if we wanted to understand them, we might just very, very quickly go through the body.
Hmm.
So, for instance, because they're not the same, right? So,
Yes.
if it's around the head area, then, you know, you would have messages around obviously connected to thinking because this is a thinking area. So, whatever your, you know, that you absorbed, and I think that's what I was trying to say also from myself with your family when you were younger, you then continue to think about it unless you're very, very clear, and you change that, right? And you go, actually, no, where does this come from? It doesn't work for me. And a lot of the thought patterns in the head are, I'm not good enough. I don't know how I'm going to do this. How, comparing yourself, judging yourself, criticizing yourself. And this is connected to your ears, what you heard from others, um, what you saw in your family often, or even as you got older in your relationships. So you've got this, real focus on the thinking. And then you get to the throat, and the throat is kind of in between the feeling and the thinking. And so I always say this is all about communication, the throat and the neck. So when I don't want to deal with challenging relationships, people actually push things back, and then they say, well, this person's a pain in the neck, because we know, right? So we actually know this aspect of the language, and then we've got kind of our emotional center from the heart, and here we hold patterns of love, openness to love, but also fear of love. We have this, I want to live my destiny. What am I meant to do here? Our desires are in our heart, but also blocking ourselves from those desires. So when we block ourselves from those desires, we become depressed. We become anxious. We become really stressed. And that actually happens in the chest and the heart more often than not. And here is also, that intimacy. And so if we have been rejected or hurt or abandoned, then we carry this in our heart and our chest and our lungs. So our lungs are all about sadness and grief. But if we keep pushing things back, we actually end up with potential kidney issues, because the kidneys and the lungs reflect each other, and the kidneys now connect to ancestry. So it's not just my grief, but it's, my grandmothers and great grandmothers, and the grief of all the people who have kind of pushed things down. And so, each part of the body kind of tells this story. And then the digestive system, which is a huge issue for pretty much most people at some point in their life, is that ancestry and digesting your experiences emotionally, right? Because it's still an emotional area. So, and assimilating and kind of taking time to understand and learn the wisdom of the painful experiences in particular is stored in the gut and in the stomach, because it's like, well, how do I assimilate this? How do I understand it? And when you don't, and that was my experience with my grandmother and grandfather, when, you don't understand and there's been so much trauma and loss, the stomach and the intestines literally become blocked, because the intestines is, when we're in the womb with our mothers, or mother, we have this cord where, through the umbilical cord, we get nourished, but we also absorb everything that the mother feels and thinks and so on. And so it's like we have these energetic cords that are reflected in our intestines, because they look like cords, right? And we carry a lot of kind of relationships and energy and trauma there. And as we start to understand and work through it, things really change. And then I'm just going to say, from the hip area, which is connected to your family, and going down into the legs, it's a will, and it's all about taking action and moving in life. And so whenever we feel unsure, confused, stuck, we start to have issues with our knees, with our ankles, with our feet. So again, this is very, very quick and general, but essentially the body communicates based on which part we're actually looking at and dealing with, and hands this, is waiting for us to access this wisdom.
Thank you. I know this is a huge topic and it's very difficult to compress it like that, but I will take it one step further than what you just said. Let's say someone listening now realizes what you just said about the part of the body that they are feeling the pain or the discomfort or whatever message, something that is not quite right. What is a next step from someone who, let's say, they feel something in their chest area, as you said, or the lungs, or somewhere around that area? What could one do as a next step to, understand what that is a little bit better?
So I always say to people, step one, if you've never done this, is to wake the body up. And it's very, very easy to do that. You just need to stand, and you need to start by placing your hand on any area in your body that feels uncomfortable. And actually take a moment and go, my discomfort, if I had to explain this to somebody, my discomfort feels like tension or cold or hot or whatever it is. So describing that sensation. And then it's almost like, can you literally, if you could take the energy of that sensation, what color would it be? And so actually taking that energy and then shaking your arm as in I'm going to let go of this tension. I'm going to let go of this stress. And you might do that a couple of times with one part of the body. And you might do it with one hand, you might do it with both hands. Essentially, you do have to shake both arms because you need the balance of the body. But as you do that, you start to feel more awakened, and you actually awaken your lymphatic system. And then you might just visualize a color like green, just as if drops of green is pouring into your nervous system. Because in order for us to get the best access, let's say, from the body, it needs to be awakened but calm. So that's kind of the best preparation. And by starting to acknowledge, we open the door to that communication. And so once we've shaken our bodies and we've visualized this green light, and maybe we took some slow, deep breaths in and out and repeated the word calm, we then again come back to the body and go, where would I like to get a message from? And so let's say it's your heart. So you would place your hands on your heart again. And this time you would breathe slowly and deeply into that area. And then you would start exploring by saying, if there was a belief or several, like a thought that I would have in my heart right now that is making my heart feel uncomfortable, let's say, what would it be? And you take a few deep, slow breaths in and out, and you allow that to come into your consciousness. Now, we already know that the heart has something to do with intimacy and relationships. So very likely you're going to start to say, well, I feel numb in the heart and I feel rejected, and the thought pattern, maybe I'm not good enough for my partner. And so as you start to go deeper, you connect the thought with the emotion, or the emotion and with the thought, whichever way comes to you first, and then to the experience. And so you start to actually become conscious of what's going on in there. And I really encourage people usually to write these things down to start to understand the story inside of themselves.
This is great. Thank you so much. I always appreciate when my guest offers practical things to the listener, and this is certainly something that one can do. And since we are on this topic of practical things, I will ask you something else. It's a question that actually came from a listener. For someone who feels trapped in emotional exhaustion, where should they begin? I know it's a general question, but so
It's fine. I understand. Well, the beginning is always to give themselves permission to slow down, because they are trapped in emotional exhaustion because they keep giving, and they often don't realize how much they're giving themselves away to others. And I feel like one of the first things that people need to do is actually take some time to reflect, and maybe have a little, again, journal there, and start writing down what led me, right? What led me to become exhausted? What actually happened? How do I, how do I give myself away? Do I have, what does a healthy boundary mean to me? Do I have them? When do I say yes when I mean no? Why do I say that? Where did I learn this? And it's almost like a self review that occurs at the beginning, where you really need to understand how you drain yourself and why, before you can change it, right? Because once you are clear, then you slowly start to put boundaries, and you slowly start to say no with a smile, and you start to communicate with people in a different way, and you also start to prioritize yourself. So you go, if my body feels this much exhaustion, I need to rest. I need to nurture myself. What does that look like? So it comes from, very basic things first, and then you might go deeper and really start to work with your body and turn things around. And it's something that I'm teaching constantly, where we go within and we start to understand how much energy we're actually giving away, and often how we don't give back to ourselves. We don't even know what it means to, we all talk about self-love as a concept, but self-love in action is very, very different. So it becomes, I feel like when you're drained in that way, you have to start to live consciously. So everything you do has to become conscious.
Thank you. Uh, you mentioned about teaching, and actually, I wanted to ask you something that I find very intriguing. You talk about the masculine and feminine dynamics through the left and the right side of the body. So tell us about this awareness and how it can change someone's healing process.
Well, many people have issues on one or the other side of the body, and they start to recognize, why. I was speaking to somebody recently, why do things always go wrong on the left side of my body? No matter what I do, and somebody else, it could be on the opposite. And so what I've understood, and again, it's like we have this different aspect of whether we're in a feminine body or masculine body. We have, on the left side, we have the feminine, because it's connected to the heart, and it's connected to your inner life, which is kind of that question you just asked. How do I feel inside? It's that invisible. It's, how do I treat myself? How do I look after myself? What was my relationship like with my mother or feminine people in my life? Did I feel supported? Did I feel unsupported? Did I feel loved? Did I feel nurtured? Did she nurture herself? Was she creative? What did I see and learn and absorb? And then you've got, on the right side, is all about making things happen in the physical world, making money, being able to look after your family, supporting your family or yourself, having dreams and and goals, and taking action steps that are visible to other people, and they go, oh, you're so busy, you're doing this with your business. And so the masculine part of us, which is connected to the liver, also is about taking action and doing things in our lives. However, when we have either we overdo it, or we've had really difficult, painful relationships with our father or partner, let's say, or brothers, people that are masculine that have impacted us, then we start to have more issues on the right side of the body. But in particular, I mentioned the liver. The liver usually is very, very intertwined with painful experiences with other males that were important in our lives. And the gallbladder, where there is rage. And honestly, I have met so many people who've had gallbladder stones, or their gallbladder's out, and it's always connected to intense rage that's been pushed down in around somebody that was very, very meaningful to them as a masculine person, who treated them in a way where they felt put down, and often during teenage years, but not always. And so again, it's just so interesting to see these different sides. And when we understand them, again, we can go, oh, this is what they're telling us to do. Either I need to go within and I need to re-nurture and do inner work, or I really need to work on my masculine side to make things happen in my life. I just taught a workshop around purpose and really living on purpose. And one of the exercises we did was focusing on the masculine and literally strengthening your spine, so that, and I was saying to people, when you get more known, people say, well, you've got to develop thick skin. And having somebody who's had psoriasis on my skin and was able to heal it, I am not interested in creating anything like that in my skin. But it's like, I thought a lot about this, and I was like, well, actually, people who are really strong and can handle many setbacks have this strong, flexible spine. So why not focus on that, on being able to, really be clear on why you're even doing something. And when people come at you, you don't need thick skin. You just need that strong inner self, that core of you that knows who you are, which is what the spine represents. It's you at the core.
Thank you for this explanation. Ina, I want to quickly ask one more thing before I start wrapping things up. And it is a situation that many of the listeners of the podcast, and I suppose many people around the world, find themselves into, and that is being externally successful, having achieved success, tick the boxes, but inside the feeling unfulfilled or disconnected. What would you say to someone listening to us right now that fits this category?
I think you've got to slow down. And I think you've got to take time to, again, self-reflect and start to go, what is meaningful to me? Because I can't think of anything worse, essentially, than being successful but empty inside. Because it's like, well, where's your success even coming from? Is it from your head? Is it from, overdoing things, which we're all good at? And, I'm good at that too. But essentially, when are you going to come back and really and truly listen to your heart? And we always have to come back to the heart, because that's the area that makes us feel either full and fulfilled or unfulfilled. So, as we take that time, very often when people become successful and they feel the way that you're talking about, they have let go of their creativity in some way or another, because creativity is what really nourishes us often. And when somebody becomes extremely successful and extremely busy, that also shows that they have this disconnection from their feminine, from the part of themselves that says, well, hold on a sec, to give out there, how are you balancing yourself? What are you doing that you love, that is bringing this energy back for you, and how often do you do it, compared to, sitting there and whatever it is that you're doing that's using your mind. How often do you use your body? How often do you give back to yourself, and what does that look like? So, for instance, like, you're in the UK, and one of the things that it's known for is theater and musicals and arts, and being creative. And so, again, it's like, how do you access vitality inside your body? Because you come back to the things that you really love to do, not because you're going to make money from it, but because being alive and loving your life is so important. And last thing I'm going to say on this topic, I think that people need to find what spirituality means to them. And a couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Understanding Modern Spirituality, which was really taking some of the deepest spirituality that I've had access to, and I've spent most of my adult life learning about different aspects of spirituality. And in my kind of early to mid 30s, I really found the depth of spirituality that I've been following, and that depth fills me with so much strength and nourishment that I don't know how to live not having that. I meditate, I connect to those aspects of the spirit every single morning and every single night. And so I really feel that once you've, especially once you kind of gain that external success, you need to come back to the heart and to, who am I? What am I here for? Who am I as a spiritual being? And how can I contribute? Because when you really discover yourself in that spiritual way, your ethics, your integrity, how you live on a daily basis, everything takes a very different color, and you become a person that you become proud of. And I think that is so vitally important.
Thank you. Ina, where would you like to direct our audience that wants to find out more about you and your work?
I really encourage people to go to my website, which is innasegal.com, INNASEGAL.com. But more even than that, I have these free masterclasses where I go into details, but also give actual processes, because they go for 3 to 4 hours, some of them, where it's like a mini workshop. So you at this point it's free. So people can have access to these masterclasses and sign up for them just by going to, again, innersegal.com/masterclass, and really giving themselves a few hours of this self-reflection and connection, and going deeper. I talk about archetypes. I talk about kind of, when you asked me that question, where did I start, which was from the victim place, and then where did I go? And so I talk about all of these parts of ourselves and the chakras and where they are, and different parts of the body and how they're affected. And also I guide people through a process of really connecting to your inner self and transforming what is blocking, as well as awakening your body up, and all the things we've talked about, but in much deeper way, because we have more time. And so I really, really encourage people to give themselves that time to slow down, to self-reflect, because there is no bigger gift that you can give yourself. And if I can say that, it took me about 3 weeks of really connecting to my body once I had my own discovery, to have the most profound healing, where I've never really experienced back pain since, or my psoriasis disappeared. My anxiety went down. It took a lot longer with the digestive issues, but there was such a huge difference, and that changed my life. and the quality of my life. And when you allow yourself to have that time, if I had not slowed down and asked those questions and went, I'm going to go within, I would potentially be in a wheelchair and, hating my life instead of, and I would say my favorite word is I am deeply fulfilled in my life. Everything I do. And when somebody asks, like my children, they go, are you happy, mom? And I'm like, I'm not happy all the time because nobody is. But ask me a different question. If you ask me, are you fulfilled? The answer is absolutely yes, because I've spent a lot of time on seeing the value of this, of feeling strengthened and inspired and encouraged and wanting to wake up every morning, because you're so excited to have another day, as opposed to, what we know most people at different times experience, which is as we get older, it becomes a struggle. And I want to inspire people to go within for the reason of revitalizing and regaining their life force.
I like the sound of that, revitalizing and regaining their life force. It is a wonderful way to express it. Thank you. I have two also quick questions that I always ask my guests. And the first is, what does personal development mean to you?
For me, personal development is slowing down, taking time, asking questions, self-reflecting, and then making conscious changes to things that don't work, that you recognize just do not work, and growing and being okay with being uncomfortable, with being, with going from something that felt comfortable, but you've recognized doesn't work, stretching yourself and moving towards something that is new and uncomfortable at that time, but will make you grow and feel deepened within yourself. Like, I feel like a soul deepens literally as we grow.
Should slow down, and I've heard that over and over again in a conversation, so it is certainly a theme that comes across. And one quick hypothetical question: if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give her?
I would say stop running. Actually slow down. Again, he says slow down and live your life, you know, in a way where, and I teach this to my daughter, so I feel like, I've had this chance again where it's like, and she says this to me all the time. She's like, my mom, I tell my friends, my mom told me this. And, live your life through the cycle where you're meant to be. So I felt like I tried to do everything too fast, too soon, because I was in such a rush to get somewhere, as opposed to what I've taught my daughter and what I would have taught my 18-year-old self is, when you are 18, just have fun, enjoy yourself, breathe, take every moment as an opportunity, and every year as you go through life, you know, really reflect and ask yourself that question: where am I at in my life and in my life cycle, and what feels right and healthy for me to do at this point? And I don't have to become the most successful that I'm ever going to be by the time I'm 25 or 30, right? I have my whole life, and and it's much more fun to, to have that slow burn and to kind of experience more depth, more wisdom. Because when you become truly successful, you need wisdom. You must have wisdom, right? Because you have power. And when you're young, that's not necessarily the time when you have a lot of wisdom. You have more energy, maybe, but you don't necessarily have wisdom. And so I would have really taught myself to go through the cycles of life in the way that you should, instead of, trying to skip steps and wanting to be at the result instead of the actual journey of what life is, and truly enjoying. And I see that in my daughter, where she's like, Mom, I'm 22, and I'm in a time of enjoying. I'm not in a time of responsibility except to myself. I'm in a time of discovering. And it's just so beautiful to see, because I felt like I really jumped many, many steps. And then you have to come back and redo them, and it becomes painful.
And I want to thank you very much for this wonderful and insightful conversation we had. I want to wish you all the very best with carrying on your mission with helping others in the way that you do. What would you like to leave our listeners with after this conversation? What's your parting words?
Feel that no matter where you are at in your life, and especially for people who are going through some kind of challenge or a struggle, and this is where it's very easy to focus on the negative. It's very easy to feel depressed or anxious or to give up on things. I encourage you not to. I encourage you to step onto your healing journey with that curiosity and open-mindedness and teachability, where you go, I don't know why I'm having this really painful or difficult or stressful experience, but I know that there is an opportunity here, and there is an opportunity for me to get better, maybe if it's a health issue, and to learn more and to understand and to grow, and essentially to become the person that I know I can become. And for whatever reason this pain is coming into my life right now, it is guiding me somewhere deeper, somewhere more profound, because even if I can't see it now, there is some blessing in this. And I really encourage people to search for it, to search for growth, to search for blessing, and to be kind, really, to be gentle and kind with yourself when you are going through really stressful situations, and allow yourself to have rest when when it gets overwhelming. Don't just keep pushing and forcing, because to burn out is so easy, and to regain that vitality is not. And so use that difficult time as an opportunity to really to become a stronger person, to become a more courageous person, to discover something new, and literally go in a search on this adventure of discovering something new.